item of business that needs to be taken care of.
Burial place.
Yes. Okay. And I'd like to go on to a little bit something else. He finds the burial place. This proves to be kind of important later on because Abraham buys that piece of property. And so he's got a legal claim to it. So this will be important later on when people start saying, well, this isn't your land. Yeah, it's our land. We bought this burial site. But after she is in the tomb, what happens next? What does Abraham need to do?
Move out of the land?
Yeah, Marina?
Well, he needs to find a wife for his son.
Exactly. And so he sends his servant. We think it's Eliezer, but we really don't. He's never given a name.
Oh, okay.
Back to Haran, to his old home. And he does not want to find a Canaanite wife for Isaac. That's really important. Why do you think that was so important? Marina?
Well, probably because he wanted to keep the traditions of his tribe and not to mix up with others.
Right. Very good. I mean, it's kind of a huge responsibility. This person that he's choosing is going to be the one who continues the tradition, who continues the covenant. So it can't just be anybody. What is the servant looking for in terms of qualities for a wife?
May I share? Okay, I would say virtue and modesty and a dedication to the faith, to our faith.
Excellent. Rebecca?
Would it be to find someone similar to Sarah?
Oh, that's interesting. Yes, I would think that that's probably some of those values are important. Brad?
Hospitality, somebody who welcomes the stranger into their midst.
Excellent. Okay, well, the question is, does he find that in Rebecca? Yes? Do we all agree? Yes? Okay, well, why? Why do we think that she is all of those things? We have the story of Rebecca meeting the servant at the well. This is important because this is a motif that you will see throughout the Torah. It seems like it's a typical stylistic thing in these stories where the true love meets their beloved at the well. Apparently the well was the gathering place for people. If you remember, we have Jacob meeting Rachel at the well. We'll later have Moses meeting Zipporah at the well. So the fact that this is where the setting is, it means that something important, very important, is going on here. This is like the big story. I saw Sukasa put in the chat that the well is fertility. That's very interesting. The water, life, the well. We definitely want a lot of fertility here. So how exactly does the servant choose Rebecca in particular?
May I?
Yep.
I believe it because she went to get water from the well and was serving. Am I right?
Yes, that is right. But why does he pick that? He speaks to God beforehand. saying, like, send me a sign, send me this person that's going to do X, Y, and Z. And Rebecca does it. So why do we bother telling the story this way, that we have, somebody asking for a sign? It sounds kind of almost magical thinking. Why is it told this way?
I don't know, I do that all the time.
Any thoughts? Well, nobody. Okay. Well, it kind of suggests that God is behind all this, that this is what God intends. So it makes the story even more significant, right? And so what about Rebecca makes her the right choice? What are some of her qualities?
Beauty,
Beauty. She is beautiful.
a servant attitude. First thing she does is think about the camels and that they're thirsty. She loves animals. She's
Good.
thinking about them. That was what Adam did in the garden, was name the animals and care for them. That's why we're here. And all those attributes that she has, beauty, grace, and immediately all the camels have got to be thirsty.
Yeah, so she loves animals. She's hospitable, right? She invites the servant to her house. And she takes initiative, right? She doesn't wait to be asked for anything. She kind of goes right up to the servant and takes care of business. So she's got initiative, caring, she helps the stranger, all of these things. Now, it says specifically in the portion that she is exceedingly beautiful. But do we hear anything about what she looks like in this portion? No. So in what sense is she beautiful? We don't know any of the details of what does she have, long hair, short hair, brown hair? We don't know.
I bet it was long. I bet she was very radiant and young looking and healthy looking and very, like a gazelle. Just really, but even, ready to cartwheel into the room.
If they're not,
Eric has a hand up, and
Steve, sorry.
It's okay. I was going to say the one thing you would think.
If we advance the story till
Hold on, Eric. Steve is talking.
Beauty often can refer to the person and their personality and their inner being. And I think based on how Leah becomes the first wife, we know this is clearly speaking about her physical beauty. So whatever was deemed attractive at the time, which was probably different than what you would see in a model today, but it would be how she appeared.
Okay. Anybody else? Brad,
Hello?
I know you say something.
Hello?
No, not Brad.
Oh,
okay.
Hello. Wasn't Rebecca quite a clever little girl?
Yes, we'll find that out later.
Because cleverness may be a beauty sign in their civilization, like a good quality trait to be clever, like she elevated Jacob above Esau, if I remember correctly, and she did like a Smothers Brothers routine on the two sons. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, we're going to get to that in the next portion. But that's very true. She's got intelligence. She's kind of crafty, but we don't know that until later. So the question is, why are they describing her as beautiful if they don't say what's beautiful about her? It seems to me that, I forget which one of you said, but I think it was Steve. Her beauty has to do with what kind of person she is. She's a kind person. She's a beautiful person. It's not about what she looks like. Okay, so we fast forward a little bit into the story, and we have Isaac meeting Rebecca. And so let's read. Can I have one reader, please? A reader? Yes? No? Anyone? Okay, Rebecca. Great.
What chapter?
Yes, so we're going to be looking at Genesis. Wait a minute, what am I doing? I have Genesis 62, 67. Oh, this is what it is. The page number in Plout is 62. 62.
What about the regular one, please? The other one?
Yeah, this is wrong. Okay, oh no, Plout is 160.
All right, okay. Doesn't matter.
161. 161 for Plout, and the Women's Commentary, page 123 to 24.
Now, what about the regular book? The other book?
Plout is 161.
Chapter and verse?
Chapter and verse.
Okay, let's see. I can't remember the number. I should have written it down. Yes. So it's
Genesis.
It's 24, chapter 24, verse 62 through 67. Chapter 24.
Okay.
So it starts in the middle of the page on Plout.
62. Okay.
Rebecca?
Okay, I also wanted to add that even though we may not know what Rebecca looks like, she obviously had great strength to be able to carry those water vessels back and forth. So I think the strength plays into who she was as a character also. That, you know, we say crafty and creative, but I think really it was her strength.
Okay. I think that's really good.
Now, Isaac had come from Berla Roy and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field in the evening. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes. And when she saw Isaac, she alighted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is the man yonder walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Okay. It's very beautiful that she enters Sarah's tent. She's the next matriarch, right? And he loves her. It's this love at first sight kind of thing. And it's interesting because Isaac is the only monogamous patriarch that we have. So his love is really very true. And it's actually the first mention in the Torah of spousal love. So,
Oh, that's beautiful. And monogamous. I love that.
yeah. And what else has love done for Isaac? Ray.
Thank you. This was actually a response before your most immediate question.
Okay.
I am noticing for the first time, really lovely progression of simple, but I think telling language in the very economical text, just of he took her and she became his wife and he loved her. And those very simple, almost Hemingway plain words, one right after another, but in that order, I think are beautiful and telling. And I think it is how substantially relationships and marriages work. The third thing in the sequence is, and he loved her. And I think that often, or even typically, when we love someone and make a life with them, we discover the love after making the decision substantially. We may admire things, we may appreciate things, our heart may be a flutter and all of that, but the love, I think, does come third. And I think it's not insignificant that we have point 1, 2, 3, and the love is the third simple but firmly stated thing to come.
Very good. So it's not love and marriage, right? It's marriage and then love, as far as how
Yes.
it's written out there.
So,
Yana?
Yeah.
oh, the rabbis.
Hold on, Rabbi Stan,
Yeah,
and then
one of the interesting things for me is that there's no theology test. The choosing of this woman did not involve checking her out and seeing if she's a polytheist, a monotheist, or whatever she is. That didn't count. And it's a
except
telling
God
thing.
points her out. God points her out, though. So it
God
must.
points her out, that's a nice statement. But in the meanwhile, she doesn't declare any loyalty to the God of Israel or to be willing to break from her family. And she does break from her family. And
Oh, yeah.
that's a testament, if you will, to her strength, but also to the fluidity of religious identity. These people, he didn't
Excuse
send
me,
her.
everybody mute if they're not speaking.
He didn't send her to a Chabad encampment to get someone who is truly deeply religious in the right way. He sent her to he sent him to a woman who would be in the future a great mother of the Jewish people. And we know along the way that she has not abandoned idolatry. And she carried some idols with her, and that happened. So it's just like it's the Wild West out there. He found a woman, good, didn't check her out in certain kinds of ways, but she was going to be loyal. She was going to be doing the right thing, and that's fine. And the last point I'd raise is, what does it mean that he took her into his mother's tent? That's a pretty big statement, and we can slide past it. What does that mean?
It doesn't just mean, right? It doesn't just mean he literally took her into the tent, right? Whose tent is it? Sarah's, right? So what is the significance that he took her into the tent? Ray, are you raising your hand? I can't. And Mark.
It was still up from before I lowered it.
Oh, okay. Mark, did you have something you wanted to say?
Not to answer on the question on point, no.
Why did you say so?
No. You could say it.
Okay. I'm sorry. I did call on Mark and then Mom.
All right, maybe I'll say something.
Okay. Go ahead. Please, Mommy.
Oh, I didn't hear you. But maybe part of the significance was that here his mother just died, and this was a horrible tragedy for him. And so now, instead of just concentrating on that, he has something wonderful and new in his life that he can divert his thoughts in a different way, in a hopeful way, in a new way to do good for the community and on and on.
Absolutely. And so, and in the text says that he was comforted for the death of his mother. So we see love as comfort for grief or for things that have changed. Mark, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So my comment wasn't on the rabbi's question of the significance of Sarah's tent, but rather just on the script itself and how, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses simply describing their meeting of Rebecca riding up and Isaac coming from meditation could be simply summarized in 2 words of they met. But this occasion is stretched out in such time and space, I believe, to focus on the massive significance of the coming together of these 2 people, this amazing thing. And as you were talking about, this is God behind all of this. and to really celebrate and be present in this moment of this coming together, at this point, the whole world's story starts new from this meeting. And so it slows down to focus on that. And that's what I get from that.
I agree. It's kind of cinematic almost. You can see them, coming together across the field, and there's, swelling music, and
Totally.
it's definitely intended to be very significant. Marina.
Absolutely.
I would like to come back to Sarah's tent.
Okay.
To me, I thought maybe it says that after binding of Isaac, Isaac did not live with his father, but lived with his mother. And maybe Sarah and Abraham had separate tents. So now Isaac brought his betrothed to his mother's tent, living there apart from his father.
I think that's very interesting, because in the Torah, we never hear Isaac say a word to Abraham ever again after that story. So you may very well be right that they were estranged in some way. Brad, and then Mara.
Yeah, there's a little point, but I'm a little bit perplexed. Isaac raises his eyes and he sees camels. and Rebecca raises her eyes and she sees him. So what are we to make of that in terms of her agency versus his in this relationship?
Well, we see more about that. What does everyone think? Who's the one who's kind of controlling things in this relationship between Rebecca and Isaac?
The universe.
Well, Rebecca's, as Brad points out, she's the one who sort of has agency. She's the one who is going for the goal. She's the one who takes the chance to go away from her home. Isaac is sort of a passive creature in all of this. Mara, what are you saying?
What strikes me is that we're not really given any indication that Isaac is, shall we say, a role model. What we are shown is that Rebecca has all of these qualities that we now associate with Judaism.
Go ahead.
She is the one that, as was noted, has agency. It's Rebecca that lifts up her eyes. It's Rebecca that chooses to veil herself in terms of modesty. And so the whole episode strikes me as perhaps establishing that it is Rebecca, it is the maternal line that really illustrates the true attributes of Judaism. And I think I should, I may be wrong, but I should rebut the earlier comment about Rebecca and idols, because I believe that's not actually in Torah.
I think that isn't that in the story of Rachel, that she's the one who brings the household gods and hides them. So I don't know. Maybe.
So my vote is for Rebecca being a really important character for us in terms of understanding what Judaism demands of us.
I agree. And I think there's something about the way this is written that highlights how important she is. How is Rebecca just like Abraham?
Oh, she leaves her home.
Mm-hmm. She leaves her home. And let's read, actually. This is Genesis 24, 56 to 58. And that's on Plout, page 160 to 61, and the women's commentary on page 122. Who would like to read? Lynn?
I'll read.
Oh,
Did they? He's okay to go. All right. He said to them, "Do not delay me now that the Lord has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master." Should I go on?
mhm.
And they said, "Let us call the girl and ask for her reply." They called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will." So they sent off their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his men.
Thank you.
And they,
Thank you. That's good. So she said, I will go. Lech, I will go. What does it sound like? Lech lecha to Abraham. We have the same verb. I don't think it's accidental. She, just like Abraham, is leaving her home. She's the one who's taking this initiative to go to a foreign place that she doesn't really know anything about. And so we have that parallel. And we also have another parallel. Take a look at Genesis page 20, chapter 24, 59 through 60. 24, 59, 60. Okay, those two.
I just sneezed. That means that applies to me.
Yeah. Okay, so whose line? Who would like to read those two lines, 59 and 60? Go ahead, Howard.
Howard, you're muted.
Sorry.
Start over, yeah.
And they sent off Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister be coming hence, myriads teeming. May your seed take hold of the gate of its foes."
Okay. So another translation, I think it's sort of a that I don't know what the translation. Where is that? What is that coming from, Howard?
Robert Alter.
Okay, that figures.
Totally different.
Yeah, I think the way it's written in sort of more compatible with normal English is sister, may you become thousands of myriads. May your descendants take possession of the gates of their foes. What does that sound like to you? Let's check it out. Chapter 22, we're going to go back to chapter 22.
It sounds like it has a lot of meaning that was added by the translators.
Well, I think it's just a more felicitous way of stating it. They're blessing her, saying, may you be very, very fertile, right? And may you become many thousands, have many thousands of descendants. So if we look at Genesis, chapter 22, 22 verse 15. And that is, okay. So it's on page 136 of the Plout. And it's on the Women's Commentary, page 103.
What books they're looking at.
Can I have a reader? Lynn, did you want to read?
Sure.
So 15, please read
Verse
15.
15.
The angel.
Then out of heaven an angel of the Eternal called to Abraham a second time, saying, By myself I swear, says the Eternal One, that because you did this thing and did not withhold your son, your only one, I will bless you greatly and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore, and your descendants shall take possession of the gates of their foes.
Very good. So the gate, first of all, we got two things that repeats. First, the angel says to Abraham, you're going to be very prolific. You're going to have lots and lots of children. And then this phrase, your descendants shall take possession of the gates of their foes. That is exactly the same language that we see if we flip back to page 161 and Genesis 24:59. May your descendants take possession of the gates of their foes. So, why do we have all these parallels with Abraham? We have Rebecca and Abraham being sort of being described in the same way, being given the same imperative. Sukasa.
I actually have a question. It almost sounds like they're substituting Rebecca to be the matriarch. So why do we have patriarchs if Rebecca's given the charge? She's told that she's going to be the one that's going to accomplish this. Why don't we switch to matriarchs?
That is an excellent question, Sukas. And we know later from the next story that she's the one who makes sure it's Jacob that gets the blessing and gets the inheritance. Without her, we wouldn't have this continuation of the covenant. So you're right. She's more the patriarch than Isaac is. Does anyone disagree with that? You can if you want.
Does she have pronouns?
I don't know about her pronoun. I imagine it was she, her, but I can't say. Okay, so not only is she brave, she's going to go to this new land. Second, we have the same language blessing her. And what else? She's hospitable, right? What does Abraham do the minute those men come to visit him in the tent? What does he run to do? You see nods, Brad.
Wash their feet.
Washes their feet. And what does he tell Sarah to do?
Provide them with food and shelter.
Okay. And what does Rebecca say to the servant at the well? She offers the same thing, right? She offers the servant to come to her home where they're going to feed him and give him water, et cetera, et cetera. So we have this hospitality as well. I don't think this is an accident. I think that there's something very deliberate going on here in these texts, giving her the power. We've seen before with Isaac. Does Isaac say anything when his father is tying him up to sacrifice him on the mountain? No. He's really a passive character in all this, whereas Rebecca is the one that's active. Sukasa.
I have another question, just to compound things. Well, apparently the writers of the Torah acknowledged this fact about Rebecca. that she was really the stronger one, that Isaac was kind of weak, that all this stuff. And yet they still made it a patrilineal progression. And I've never thought about it really before, but it doesn't make sense. Why did they do it?
Well, I think it probably makes sense in the context of the culture they had in the ancient world. But I think what's interesting is that our Torah is making it pretty clear that that whole custom is not necessarily the right custom, right? She's the one who's really the strong one. Fern.
Well, it just strikes me that there's a comparison to very Orthodox Jews today. If you ask them, why do women have such a terrible place in your customs and so on, they will say, no, women are the most powerful. The most powerful. They do these things willingly. And then nonetheless, it's totally, all the power really lies with the men. Nobody gives up power willingly. And the fact that the women are doing what they say is the most important doesn't change a thing about who wants to retain the power. They don't go hand in hand. And the same thing is happening here. You've got clearly the star of that family is the woman, but the covet goes to Isaac.
Very good. Larry.
Well, I can imagine in the ancient world, and to follow on with Fern, even today, that you can structure a society where men and women have different roles. But when it comes to this, which is sort of being the progenitor and carrier of the faith, you sort of want men and women to have responsibility for doing that. And here are the parallels that you're pointing out between Abraham and Rebecca, put on both men and women from the very beginning those responsibilities for being role models for the faith and carrying it on and passing it down to your descendants. And so I think the parallels are interesting, but it's pointing to a very specific thing.
Okay. Rebecca. Good name.
I always have difficulty with this passage. I've got two things. Not only is there a parallel of Rebecca with Abraham, but I think there's also one with Sarah, as I pointed out before. You said something which triggered in my mind the fact that Sarah also chose the next person to carry on the covenant in terms of making sure Ishmael was out of the way. And Rebecca did the same thing. The second thing that I want to say is that through Emeritus College, I'm taking a class, I've mentioned this before, taking a class called Bible as Literature. And this semester, we're talking about women in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. We just finished all the women in the Old Testament, and it just seems like the main purpose for women in the Old Testament is to bear children, and how much problems women have when they don't bear children.
Well, that's definitely a theme, but there's more to it, right? We see Rebecca being the one who's moving the chess pieces around, as is Sarah. And oh, by the way, in terms of Sarah, I think you're right. She also follows the call to leave her homeland, right? We just don't hear about her. We hear about Abraham. She also left her home. Who was, I think it was, yeah, Howard, please. I think you were next.
I'm thinking that this text may be a hint about how the Genesis is a revisionist document. And it may be that what we're reading are things that men wrote, scribes, 25 centuries ago, about things that were supposed to have happened 35 centuries ago. So how could they have any real recollection of what happened? But they may have had some, and it may be that whatever was in the first kingdom Israel, Israel before the fall of the first temple was a much more female-oriented society, like many other Mesopotamian societies, and women played an important role. And these men were furiously trying to excise all that and create a new reality that's very, very patriarchal and very demeaning, really demeaning of women, despite what excuses might be made. That it puts women in a really low category, I think. And that's
do we see women in a low category in this story in terms of their
No, I don't.
It's true that what I'm saying is that we may be seeing the original story peaking out because it may have come down in this form, and they didn't excise it, but in generally speaking, they did excise it. That's what I'm not, obviously this is very this promotes up the position of women in these particular writings, but we know that these writings are all fragments derived from old sources and new sources put together with new writing. Although we don't know it, but we guess it.
Marina.
While we're talking about future events, when Rebecca manipulated Isaac and assigned the supremacy to Jacob in the between the siblings, I think it reflects the general trend when a woman acts kind of behind the scenes and does not demonstrate the power she may have, keeping the man a denominative head of the family, but being the head of the family anyway. And it can be attributed to ancient times as much as modern times. It doesn't have to be demonstrated who's in charge, but the woman may be in charge anyway.
Very good point.
Brad, may I share?
Okay, first Brad, then Donna.
Okay.
Well, Rebecca's father is Lot's cousin. In other words, her father was in the same relationship with Abraham as Lot. And yet, Abraham does not bring Rebecca's father with him when he leaves. So I think this is a very carefully constructed story so that they've got to go back to get Rebecca, and therefore to draw this parallel with Abraham leaving and Rebecca leaving her family behind.
Very interesting.
It's what I'm trying to say is we tend to think of these fragments as independent of each other and not tied together. But I think this is a very carefully crafted story to show these parallels.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think any of this is accidental. It's too similar to be accidental. Donna, you're next, and then Mara.
About Rebecca and her being in power, I really believe, although, I mean, equally the man and the woman, the wife and the woman has to say, even though the man is speaking and representing, like she's the head of the household, trust me, that's my wife, happy life, right? So I really believe, like, look at Esther, for example, on a totally different chapter, but Esther was picked. And then she went into a different land, and her uncle said, "Don't mention you're a Hebrew." God uses the women all through history to marry into different kings, with to bring peace and save the Jewish people. I mean, it's that we are used. Even I don't want to use the word used. We are chosen by God to marry into a certain home to bring forth peace and go to a foreign land and look at a different faith, but keep our faith and make people aware that we are Hebrews and not be ashamed of that. God uses that. That's what I want to say because it's important.
I think that's a really good point. Very interesting. Mara, what do you have to say?
I want to go kind of back to what Brad said about all these stories being woven together and that it's not accidental. And I think as we all talk about all of these stories in the Torah, and we so often talk about these were written, revised by different people, I'll call them different scribes, that we often lose the understanding that this is a divine text and that all of these stories that are woven together for the purpose of the author, God.
That's definitely some, I mean, if not God, whoever put this all together, whoever was the redactor of all these pieces, did it in a very artistic way, very deliberate way.
Which had to be, and I know I may be in the minority in this group, but in a way that could only be directed, if you will, by God, no matter who actually did this in what we would call our everyday world.
Yes, very good point. Who is?
Why?
Can I just say divine intervention? Divine intervention is definitely happening in my life.
Yeah.
Can you please let some other people talk?
Okay, so what I would say, we're running out of time, but I just wanted to make one more note. That's very interesting about this parsha. There's a lot of symmetry to it. We start off with Sarah's death, and we end with Rebecca going into Sarah's tent and carrying on the tradition. So it's kind of a very beautiful story, I think. Anyway, I think we need to do the Kaddish. So those who.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So let us remember those who have passed away during the past month. Melvin Adler, Susan Kaplan, Phyllis Castle, Irit Kriegier, Sharon Larson, Audrey Pekelny, Miriam Reisman, Fuad Salem, Bill Tenenblatt, Melissa Aaron Victor. Those who have died defending the United States of America, and those who have died defending the state of Israel. And here are the yard sites that occurred during the past week. Alma Abrams, Sam Adlin, Celia Adler, Julius Adler, Sarah Ansel, Richard Warren Bank, Samuel Berkowitz, Thelma Berkowitz, Marie Berman, George Barris, Faye Albin Bolonic, Ralph Bookman, Bloom Boville, Joseph Brandis, Evelyn Buckspan, Rose Kaspari, Lillian Cohen, Ruth Rebecca Cohen, Saul Cutrow, Ruth Dubin, Sanford Fagadav, Francine Feynman, Betty Feldman, William Fenning, Paul Fisher, Robert Frankel, Melanie Freistadt, Linda Gosh, Charles Gelfand, Irving Gerstein, Shirley Glick, Arnold Gold, Abraham Gordon, Lazarus Moses Gordon, Inez Grover, Sherry Grush, Yafa Hagnazadeh, Gerald Oswald Heyman, Richard Heller, Rose Hunkovsky, Margaret Jashny, Ben Kaiserman, David Carney, Bess Katzinger, Richard Harold Kent, Meyer Kessler, Lillian Koslow, Arnold Kroll, Charles Leonard Levin, Nat Levy, Peter Lewis, Lois Liebhaver, Sarah Lippo, Sheldon Lulov, Ruth Majoffis, Edward Massey, Nell Mendelsohn, Marie Moran, Harry Morton, Bernice Parker, Joan Perlmutter, Samuel Pike, Pearl Post, Bessie Pugach, Isidore Pugach, Fran Rappaport, Donald Relkin, Benjamin Rubin, Francis Richter, Sanford Rosenbaum, Harry Rosenberg, Elias Victor Rosencrans, Mildred Firth Rosencrans, Howard Ross, Benjamin Sachs, Leah Sauter, Carol Schachter, Carol Schaer, Nancy Schmidt, Mary Schaffer, Kate Schwartzman Shapiro, Bernard Bud Shields, Goldie Silverstein, Ivan Sloan, George Smith, Howard Sobin, Walker Strauss, Bernard Tuman, 1 week, Beverly Virani, Wally Weissenberg, Leslie Weitzman, Blanche Weiner, Frederick Wolf, Leora Wolf, Marjorie Yesem, Charles Zlotkin, and anyone else's names that we hold in our heart.
Betsy Plevin.
Betsy Flevin. Anyone else? Okay.
Mark Shopson, November 22nd, 1992, father of my kids. May he rest in peace.
Okay. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah. Yalma divra kirite v'yamlicha Achayachom Yomechum Achaye Dekol Beit Yisrael Agalam Zman Kari V'Yimru Amen.
Amen.
Hey Shmei V'Av V'Alam Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach Yitbar Yitramam V'Naseh Yithadar V'Yitala V'Yitalal Shmei V'Kusho Ba'ela Min Birachata V'Shirata Tushbachata V'Nechmata Amiran V'Yama V'Yimru Amen. Shalom B'Ramav Huyas Shalom Amen V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen.
Amen.
Suppose this is my father's or it's like
Shalom, Shalom. Hallelujah, Kol Yisrael.
Hebrew, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Donna, thank you so much.
Shalom. Thank you, Donna.
Have a good week. Happy Thanksgiving, Turkey Day. Hi, Rebecca. Bye, Rebecca. See ya. Bye, Merle. Bye, Donna. Bye, Brad. Bye, Vay. See everybody. Shalom.